Okay, hello everyone. We're just gonna give the Zoom platform to a minute to let everybody trickle in, and then we'll begin. Okay. Hello and welcome to Live from the Studio with Anne Bourrassé. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Bahar Mahazadnia, and I'm the Assistant Curator of Engagement here at Griffin Art Projects. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that our work takes place on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish Nation, to whom we are deeply grateful. As well, we would like to thank the British Columbia Arts Council, North Vancouver Recreation and Culture, and the Frybe Foundation for their support of today's event. This program is a collaboration between the Polygon Gallery, Griffin Art Projects, and the Cité Internationale des Arts with the support of the Embassy of France in Canada and the Canadian Cultural Centre in Paris. Just a quick housekeeping note. If you would like to see live captions displayed for today's event, you can enable this by selecting the CC Live Transcription button at the bottom of your screen. And I'll also mention that there will be a chance at the end of today's presentation for audience questions. So at the end or throughout the presentation, if you have questions for Anne, feel free to type them in the Q&A chat box. Zoom also has the option for you to raise your hand and ask your question out loud. We won't be able to see you, but we'll be able to hear your voice. So if you're feeling inclined and brave, we encourage you to raise your hand and ask your question out loud. And just to note that this event is being recorded, so your voice will also be recorded. So before I introduce Anne, I'll tell you a little bit about the residency program. Alternating annually for 4 years between Paris and Vancouver, the aim of the France-Canada Curatorial Residency is to provide opportunities to develop curatorial projects and foster cultural exchange in response to contemporary art contexts in France and Western Canada. The program was established in October 2021. Writer, curator, and cultural producer Misla Lebsecal from Vancouver was awarded the inaugural residency, which took place at the Cité Internationale des Arts in the Marais district of Central Paris. Residents are hosted at Griffin Art Projects during their tenure. The residency provides travel, accommodation, and a stipend for 3 months, as well as a production budget to launch a public program. I'll read the recipient of this year's bio, Anne Bourrassé. Anne Bourrassé is an independent curator and art critic at the intersection of the visual arts and humanities. She was art director and curator at Le Consulat Voltaire Cultural Center in Paris and works with numerous cultural institutions in France and abroad. In 2019, she co-founded the association Contemporaines in France to fight against gender inequalities in contemporary art. She is a graduate of the École Nationale Supérieure des Arts Décoratifs de Paris, Sciences Po Paris, and Cornell University, USA. She is a winner of the ADIAF Émergence Grant for curator/art critic in France. So to tell you more about her research, I will now invite Anne to join us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Bar, for the introduction. Okay, let me share my screen so I can show you more about my research. Give me a minute. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Anne.
Okay, I'm just trying to, sorry, I'm just trying to put it full screen. Here we go. Is that okay, Bar? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, that's perfect.
Great. Thank you for coming and for being here on a really sunny day. It's really weird to speak with my computer right now, but I will be really happy to have your feedbacks, critiques, vibes after this presentation. I will present you my curatorial practice, where it comes from, where am I today, and where it will go, I guess. So I've been an independent curator and art critic since the last 6 years. I've been doing exhibitions in Paris, but in Dakar, Senegal, and doing many collaborations with artists and institutions. I'm a self-taught curator. I was actually graduated from an art school, from l'École des Arts Décoratifs de Paris, in a photography master. So I come from an artist background to a curatorial background. And I like to explain my job as simply saying like curator comes from cura. Cura in Latin means take care. So my job is to take care of artists, basically. So how I do that? I've been running as an art director and curator for the last 2 years, a cultural center in Paris called Le Consulat, in the 11th district. And it has been a great adventure, really engaged with societal and political issues such as feminism, ecology, decolonizations. And I've been working on the programming, and also I've been working, so you can see many images from those installations, video, paintings, photography. It was also a moment and a place to welcome first solo show for many artists. And I've been also running the studios. So we had 40 artists in studios with many different practices. I put some pictures I've made with my Olympus camera. I use, actually today I use photography as a tool to archive my encounters. So here's some of the people I met. And yes, Bar was talking about it, but going out of school 5 years ago, I figured out that we were 70% women in my school and also in all French art school. There are 40 art schools right now in France. So feminism wasn't really a subject. It was before Me Too, and we didn't have the chance to talk about those issues of representations and gender representations. So one day I read this article saying like it's gonna take 150 years before gender equality in France in contemporary art. So I just figured out I didn't want it to be dead before seeing that. So I co-founded this organization called Contemporaines in 2019 and now we are 40 people, all bénévoles. It's a non-profit organization based in Paris and Marseille in France. And we are working to fight against gender inequalities, promoting women, non-binary and transgender artists in France. So I just collected some data for you to understand the French context and where all this research come from. But for example, like it's 44% lower income for female artists compared to men in France right now. You have only 30% of women, non-binary, transgender artists represented in museums and only 20% in galleries. Right now, we just closed this big event called Paris Art Basel, Paris Plus, and there were 30% of women shown in the fair. So it's still pretty alarming. So based on those data, I became really obsessed with data because not like the rumor, data are true. And so from there, we built many projects, conversations, exhibitions to gather and to talk and to address those issues on an international and more international and abroad also context, but also like intersectional feminism angle. So race, gender, class issues. Some of the picture you see now, that there are the events we made, and yeah, dinner also. And we have a mentorship program since 3 years, which gather every year confirmed and established artists with emerging artists. And it's a way to create networks and to create sisterhood outside of the institutions. So here you go. After 5 years of activism in feminism, I became really interested in this gender representation issues and practices in contemporary art for women, non-binary and transgender artists. And this research brought me to Dakar, Senegal, where I was invited at the beginning of the year to the research in this space called Célébéon in Dakar, in collaboration with the French Institute. So I put some picture for you to have the energy of the place, but so this is a quick look of my research there. As you can see maybe on the right, so basically my methodology was really simple. I had this space in the gallery. People were coming every day. I put some papers and they were able to put names of women, non-binary and transgender artists they knew. And based on these names, I met the artists and I created this subjective genealogy of Senegalese artists. Of course, the context, of course, the situation, the history is really different from what I knew in France. So it was a research residency is always like just basically being a sponge, meet people and listen to them to understand the context. For example, to give you a quick view, in Dakar, there's only one art school called Les Beaux-Arts de Dakar. And every year it's 15 people who graduate. And on these 15 people, only one woman per year for the last 10 years. So it gives you an idea of the representations and also like how the cultural scene in Dakar is organized. It's all women who runs galleries, museums, project spaces. So this is really interesting. There's a huge sisterhood there, a lot of support between institutions and galleries and projects. So I met many artists, as I said. So you have some picture of them: Eva Diallo, Samira Fall, Carla Gay. So the scene is really intergenerational. I've been able to meet some pioneer artists and really emerging ones. And at the end, we ended up with a talk with some artists. And sorry, we made a publication. So, and we published a journal and we shared it in kiosks in the city for free. So at the end, the conversation was open source, kind of. So this research is still ongoing, of course. Too soon to have conclusion, but it was really interesting to be there. And after this residency, I felt like I needed other context. And this is where I ended up in Vancouver. So where should I start? It has been 2 incredible months since I'm here. I'm a little emotional because it's also the end of this residency. I met so many incredible people, and I want to thank all of the people I met who give their time, their support, and their knowledge for me. This residency has been possible thanks to the Griffin Art Project, the Polygon Gallery, and the French Embassy, also the Cultural Canadian Center in Paris and the Cité des Arts. Here's a quick look at my research. Actually, you can see it background, yeah. Okay, let me. let me do a tour. So just a quick studio visit, and then I will show you on my screen. But here I put some images of the people I met. If you have the chance to come tomorrow to the studio visit, you will be able to see it for real and have conversations about it. And here's the genealogy. So it's a subjective genealogy of history of feminism in Vancouver area. And of course, when I say Vancouver, I wanna make sure that I acknowledge the Musqueam, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Thanks to them for sharing their land with me. And yeah, so these 3 shows have been really, really dense. Readings, meetings, and of course, first you arrived, the idea was to have a research on the contemporary art scene, the feminist scene, and the artist practice for women-identified artists, such as women, non-binary and transgender artists. So where to begin? I walked in the city and I collected some data. So, for example, just a quick look at data because it's always nice to have this reminder, but that's 80% of identified as women, non-binary, and trans students in Emily Carey University since the last 20 years, according to the dean of the university. Only 19% of women artists have been represented in Canada at the Venice Biennale. 50% of women artists are actually shown, women and non-binary are actually shown by one of the biggest galleries in Vancouver called Catriona Jeffrey Gallery. And yeah, what did I put? Okay, and 2 women artists. Yeah, so I was talking about walking because to me, one of the big issue is that it's monumental scale artworks. It's a big issue on gender representations because we assume that women are not capable of managing a team, managing a budget, and as they are sell less than male, it's less interesting for gallerists to invest in their work. So this is how we end up with only 2 women artists for 16 male artists commissioned for permanent sculptures in public space for the Biennale de Vancouver between what, 15 years? 15 years. And for example, for the Morrison, Hill and Belkin Art Gallery at UBC on campus, there's only 4 women and 24 male artists in the outdoor art collection. So for sure, we need to go further on these data. It's just a quick, I'm here just scratching the surface for 2 months. This residency is too short to make assumptions and to make conclusions. So I thought it could be interested to share this data with you. But most important, what I've done here is that I met many, many people, and through those artists, cultural workers, curators, gallerists, institution directors, I was able to have a temperature on the scene. And I want to thank them. So I put some picture for you in the presentations. Thank you for all of them who take time and a lot of energy and friendship also for me. After 1 month and a half meeting all those people, I just had this big question. So if we think about gender discriminations in museum, galleries, public outdoor programs, where it comes from. And every time I'm in a different city and a different context, the answers are really different and the hypotheses can be really different. For sure, there are structural and systemic discriminations, in society for gender equality. But at this point, I just want to say it's my first presentation in English, so my apologies for misspelling and, you know, so thank you. Yeah, so I was saying one of the many hypotheses of why women, non-binary, transgender artists weren't as visible as male in Vancouver art history. It's an history shaped with a lot of boys' clubs, such as Painters 11, Group of Seven, the Vancouver School also. So they were there, but one of the hypotheses is that also they were there and they were really active building communities and building safe spaces for their communities. So I've been really interested through all these meetings to understand what kind of communities, what was where were the shapes, the forms of those communities, what was the idea behind, and so this is where I'm going now. I feel like when we think as community as an art practice, what is interesting is that in the art market and in the recognition of institutions, community doesn't appear. I mean, we talk about painting, sculpture, installation, performance, video, but what if we think as community as an art practice itself, and what if we can give a value of it? What if it has because it has a cultural value, it has an intellectual value, it has an economic value. So what if we consider that this value, when I say value, it will be really interesting to go further on that idea, but what I want to say is that if we think of all those communities, it is as important as all the shapes and the artworks that have been brought on this scene. So I've been focusing on those communities, and I can share. I don't know if we still have time. Do we? I'm just wanting to give you a quick look on the people and communities I've been meeting with. So, for example, the photographer and artist Rebecca Bear, she's she co-founded last year the Black Art Center in Surrey to create a place for Black voices and practices and encounters. There's also Nicole Andre. She's an artist. She's graduated from ENICA, and she co-founded this collective called Feminist Land Art Retreat. And she also co-founded a space called Exercise Project to address feminist issues, to invite many women artists to show their work there. Of course, after we can talk more about those projects after my presentation. There's also Jen Sunction. She founded this project called Love Intersections to give a place and images and aesthetics to queer communities in Vancouver. Also, Angie Warner, poet and artist, she created this place called, she co-founded the project called The Haven for transgender expressions. There's also Kate Gregg in history, because I was really interested in communities over decades in Vancouver, of course. So I didn't have the chance to meet Kate Gregg because she's dead now, but I met her through her archives. Thanks to Suzanne Gibb and Anna Tidlund at Western Front for showing me her work. But yeah, she had actually she left her jewelry boxes, so I was able to look at all of her picture jewelries. It was a really nice moment to meet her through those objects and stories. So Kate Gregg, she co-founded a Western Fund in 1973. She was the only woman in the co-founders, and she brought many feminist events programming venue in the building. They had this huge conference in 1985 called Women in Words. It was according to some people I met, it was a game changer in the performing and poetry art scene to witness all these women gathering together to make this symposium happening. I can talk about also, I had the chance to meet Karen Knight. She's the archivist for since several years now at the Vivo Art Center, which is a center dedicated to video and archives. And she brought me many stories about great women artists who have built projects, such as Dana Claxton with the Image Indigenous Media Art Group in 1989, Sarah Diamond with the Women Labor History Project in 1978, Leno Herb, ISIS Women and Film Collective. So there were a lot of community in the video, also in the video art, contemporary art world in Vancouver. What else? Feven Tesfaye. She's a cultural worker, and she's actually co-director at the Vancouver Black Library. What's interesting is that all those communities have been built because of some common feelings. There were many of them telling me that they felt isolated in Vancouver. They felt like they needed to gather, they needed space for their autonomy. And so now I'm really grateful I was able to see all of those communities. Of course, there are so many I didn't talk about, and there's still so many to talk about. But I was really interested to see how, at the same time, it's really fragmented. You have all of those small communities, but the overall, the global picture makes it a really strong and intense and dynamic art scene. So it was really interesting to witness this happening. And yeah, I want to make sure that I say thank you to everyone. And yeah, this project wouldn't have been possible through, curatorial practice is definitely collective practice, is definitely social practice. I was able to gather all of these stories because everyone that I met gave time and energy for me. So thanks to all of them, and I will be happy. I probably missed many things, but I will be really happy to have your feedbacks and critiques about this research and presentation. So thank you for listening to me.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's been truly a pleasure to see what you've done in the span of 2 months. It almost feels like you've been here for years and have just sort of really gotten to know the ecologies and the microecologies of the Vancouver art scene. I see there's already a question in the Q&A. It's Marianne Bancroft saying thanks, Anne. So I now invite questions from the audience, and I'll begin by asking the first question while you type away and roll away your questions. It was really, really insightful to see your approach to curatorial practice in such a democratizing, decolonizing, and this feminist approach. I mean, through this detailed genealogy, you've outlined these monumental gaps, and really looking through a mindset of collectivizing and community care in curatorial practice. My first question is, what aspects of this research will you hold most dear and take with you? And where do you see the future of this project going?
First, I need to come back. There's many stories I haven't heard, and also it could be it's really a collective project. So for sure, it can become an exhibition, can become a publication, can become a series of talk and conversations. It can have many different forms, but I think, yeah, maybe an exhibition could be a nice way to gather all those researches. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense as the next stage in this sort of this vast timeline and outline. It'll truly be a treat, and I hope to see it one day culminate in an exhibition or some other visual format. You have this tendency to archive everything you do, which is a true pleasure to see, because we really do get to, you did these studio visits and you met these people, but to have this kind of tangible animated representation of them, it's brilliant. It's truly the invisible labor of curating is going behind the scenes and meeting people and having all these studio visits and these talks. So this archive that you've built, I guess that leads me into my next question. So do you
Yeah,
use this archive?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to acknowledge that there are also like many curators, historians, critics, and artists who have done a great job here, bringing these stories and doing exhibitions about it. So I just want to make sure that I'm extending. I mean, I'm just one extending this research, but it's a common knowledge.
Mm-hmm. It's in the collective memory. Yes. So Rebecca Brewer says, thank you, Anne. We appreciate you. And there's a couple of questions. I'll start with Miriam. And Miriam is asking, are you also a practicing artist? Was there anything that impressed you about the artworks that women in Vancouver were doing?
So can you just repeat the question?
Yes,
Please,
of course.
the last part?
Yes. Was there anything that impressed you about the artwork that women in Vancouver were doing?
Yeah, of course. Many things. Yes, I mean, I ended up working on those communities because this is striking. I mean, the genealogy of feminism in Vancouver is driven by women who were like really in front of protest, leading unions. I think of many strikes and revolutions happening in the city that have been realized, that have been putting in action thanks to women. So I feel like, yeah, they are really active. They are really, really active in the art scene in Vancouver, and so I was really impressed by that. Of course, many spaces are run by women, non-binary, and trans artists, curators, directors. So maybe not the biggest ones, but a lot of them.
Great.
I want also to thanks to Rebecca Brewer for her comments. I want to like, if she's actually a great example. She built a union to save her building. So she built this with many artists, with a community of the artists. They protest and they take action to save their building from eviction. Can we say that? So yeah, many different forms and shapes. And the question began by the art practice, right?
Yes, the first part of the question was, are you also a practicing artist?
Tough question. I think that I ended up being a creator because it was more simple to talk about others than to talk about my own practice. And now I've been processing my school years, and I feel like I can be a creator and use photography, writing, poetry as a tool in my practice. So I'm definitely mixing everything. I cannot say I have an art practice. I mean, I don't feel legitimate to say it, but definitely I feel like curator. Being a creator is being able to use many different kind of tools for researches. So I use them. I use art as a tool.
Thank you. So the next question we have is from Zoe Chan. And Zoe is asking, what surprised you most about your research here?
On a more global scale, I feel like that she asked, yeah, she wants feedback from the global, maybe. Thank you, Zoe, for the question. Different things. The intergenerational, I don't know, can you say that right? Intergenerational? Intergenerational? The
You got it, yes.
Of the scene, there's a huge respect for elders, for established artists and emerging artists, and all of them they are exchanging together, which is definitely something really different from what I've seen in Paris. The intergenerational idea of the scene is really different here, so this is really, really interesting. The strength of so many communities, I feel like you are able to express your own individuality in different kind of communities, which at the same time is really interesting because I feel like it's really fragmented. And even if there are a lot of communities, they don't necessarily talk to each other. So I feel a kind of like isolation from all of these projects, and it will be interesting to see where it crosses, as well as actually intersectional feminism, where it crossed the white feminism and the indigenous feminism and the Black feminism, and how everything gather, where it gather in over and in the genealogy also. So definitely this feeling of a lot of scene, a lot of community which are really isolated from each other. And what strikes me also in comparison to Paris scene also is that there are project spaces, but not a lot because of the real estate market. Is crushing, it's a big pressure here on the art scene, and it's a really heavy pressure, which means that you have galleries, you have institutions, but the in-between for emerging artists, spaces for self-expression, experimentation, freedom is not as important as I see it in France. And I think it's just a lot, and maybe it's the only reason because of the price of the real estate and the expensive a really expensive life and wealthy situation of Vancouver. Does it respond to your question, Zoe? How do you feel about that?
Maybe we'll move on to the next question while we let Zoe respond. So the next question is from Marian Bancroft. And Marian says, I think it's so valuable that you're looking at the range of practices over the years. Did you find particular reasons for the gender discrepancies here that are different from other places?
The history is different because of the, I talk about the groups, the group of 7, but also like the Vancouver Art School on an international level. We refocus on the Vancouver School of Photoconceptualism, which is led by many male artists. And I mean, Marianne Penner-Bancroft. I mean, so everyone is refocusing on this scene, which overshadow the work of women for sure. This is my opinion. I have also checked on something interesting, that's the prioritized group, the politic founding of the British Art Council is based on prioritized group, but those prioritized group, actually it's everyone. So I will be happy to go further on that, to see if there are real policies to take actions against gender discriminations, because right now I feel like it's a really large and wide range of people. Basically, you're not in prioritized group if you're a male, white, between 30 and 50, not living in Vancouver but in the area, if you have no disability, if you're heterosexual, and if you're Catholic. So this brings and all other people that are prioritized group, which means actually everyone. So yeah, interesting also to see on more political issues and political policies what have been done and what is doing.
And Zoe did say yes, thank you. So thank you, Zoe. So with that, I'll move on to the next question, and that's from Miriam. There is a recent aperture in Vancouver as well as in Canada to include First Nations / Indigenous artists in our ongoing dialogue. Is that a subject of interest to you? Did you have a chance to hear their voices?
Of course. I mean, I didn't talk about it earlier in the questions, but first thing when you arrive, is it just shocking? I mean, it's a cultural shock for me, because from France, we don't talk about the genocide on indigenous nations, because also the French colonization is basically the other side of the Canada. So we don't talk about this part of Canada. So when I arrived, I had no idea about this history. So that was a huge shock for me. So of course, I brought up the subject in my genealogy, all the key dates, also in the recognition of the First Nations, and at some points, yeah, there's some questions that I still have, that in the 70s, the feminist art scene was really, really active, but we can see a rise of white feminism, while for indigenous women, there are all these stories about the Highway of Tears, the missing and murdered indigenous women and girls. So I will be really interested to go further on those research to see, even in the genealogy of feminism and indigenous feminism, how things were when it became visible. And I don't know, I still have many questions about that. I met indigenous artists, not enough, actually, for sure. It wasn't, as I said, it was just me scratching the surface. I was helped to do all of those meetings by the collaborators in the institutions, but I felt like there's a lot missing still. So yes, of course, it has to be in this research. I became really interested by the project that Dana Claxton created with the archives are at the Vivo, but the collective is called Image, Indigenous Media Art Group. So definitely the idea, if I go further on this project, is to go deeper, because 2 months you're just in the surface, and when we talk about feminism, as we know, it's not as visible, so we have to go deeper and deeper and deeper and take time, for sure.
Excellent. So the next question is from Ido Radon. And Ido says, as you've done research such as this in other cities, what have you found to be particular to Vancouver with regard to the ways that the production and exhibition of art is supported financially here and has changed over time? I'm asking about this because when we talk about making making our community for artists, making space for gathering and showing artwork, when there is not money to support it, there is unpaid labor. And as you know, it is most often done by women.
Wow, I mean, do we have 2 hours? I'm not the person to respond to this question. I mean, I've been here for like 7 weeks, 6 weeks. This is a huge subject here for sure. I feel like if women artists were really active in the 70s to build Art Runs Center, which is like the big specificity of this city, and how the art world is structured is because of these artist run spaces. Over a decade and over time, all those artists have been replaced by cultural workers, and it's I mean, now, like, having funds and sponsor, it takes so much energy, administration time, that it like didn't froze, but it allowed less freedom. It allowed less. I was talking earlier about those art projects where you can like experiment. I feel like because you have to write down all of your projects before for the foundings, there's less freedom also to just push ideas and in a more spontaneous way, and maybe on more political issues, I feel like. What can I say? In Dakar, Senegal, the entire scene is run by women. Gallery, museums, institutions, project space. So I've been wondering why. And one of the hypotheses, again, is that Senegalese men, they are not interested in the contemporary art market because they don't see it as a business. So it allows women to make this space for themselves and to make spaces and take spaces. So this is one specificity. Also something, I just want to also talk about the methodology. While in Dakar, I asked people to give names. It was a participative process of curatorial research. Here, I began by looking at the names, but there are thousands. So I had to change my methodology of working because there are too many women, non-binary, queer, trans artists. So I came up with the meetings and through the people, the communities, but I just want to say that the methodology is still moving and I'm still processing. And actually, I didn't have the time to process, to digest. I've been absorbing for 2 months and I need time to come back to you with more observations.
That's a perfect segue actually into our next question. And that's from Miriam again. And Miriam says, thank you for your thoughtful responses to my questions. You seem to have enough material for a doctorate program in curatorial practices. My next question is, are you planning to come back to Vancouver or Canada to continue with your research?
I would love to. I would love to, for sure. I feel like also it's something we have to question as curators. We are invited to come on lands that are not ours. We take materials, we gather materials, and then we go back to our country. But like this work, this material, it has to be a conversation. It cannot be a one shot. And so I definitely want to come back because I don't feel comfortable of bringing this all research back in France and do not continue the conversations with the people I met, with the institutions, with everyone. So for sure, I want to come back, go deeper on this research, and have like, maybe have a shape on a project. I don't know if it makes sense, but for now, it was really a research project, which is really nice because as curators, when we work in cultural centers on project, we don't have as much time to think, meet, and read. So this is really precious for me. It's definitely game changer in my curatorial practice, definitely. And I feel like it's collective practice. So I'm not the one, I want to come back, but I cannot come back if it's not supported by a collective of people.
And then we have a question from Lisa, and Lisa says, I recall you speaking about the multi-generational nature of the Vancouver communities. Could you speak a bit more about that aspect of what you discovered here?
I don't, maybe it's because also it's a big scene, but it's the smaller one that I compare. So there's more relation between different generations because they gather in a few spaces that they're able to meet each other. Definitely the established women artists, curators, director, they were supporting emerging curators, women artists, non-binary, transgender. I mean, there's a continuity, it's a good question. I feel like a lot of respect between generations, as I already said, a lot of support, but this is just me speaking, a 2 months view. I don't know if, but I feel like, and also the practice. I mean, for example, when I see the work of Elizabeth McIntosh, she's a painter and she's a teacher at Emily Carr since 15 years now. And she brought the conversation about painting in Emily Carr. She founded this project called Twilight Hour, and she gathered people, artists, students to talk about painting and now sculpture. But I feel like the teaching also, the generation of teachers right now in art schools such as Emily Carr, they are really helping the youngest generation to find their way in this genealogy, to find role models and new kind of role models and new ones also. So the history, how it is teaching is changing also. I'm not sure it responds to your question, but I still have to think about it.
Well, thank you, Anne, for taking the time to be here with us today and sharing this incredible research. I will wrap things up here, but if there's any final questions in the chat, please type away. But before we wrap up, we hope to see you tomorrow at the open studios that are happening here at Griffin Art Projects. So those will be from 12 to 5 p.m. And there will also be a curator's tour with Lisa Baldessera of the exhibition Shift Ecologies of Form, Fashion, and Textile. And the curatorial tour will be from 1 to 2 p.m. and the open studios will be from 12 to 5 p.m. And please come by and see the research and work of artist Maru Aponte and Anne Bourrassé, our curator in residence. And we hope to see you there. Thank you for joining us today.
I just want to say thank you very much for being here while the sun. And also I will be really more comfortable tomorrow in person speaking with you and showing you the research and talking about all of these projects. So make sure to come tomorrow for sure for a coffee and a nice chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And just a reminder that the gallery is open Friday through Sunday, and the Shift exhibition will run until December 10th. And we will have the Combine Art Fair happening here in the residency space from December 10th to December 11th, with the opening reception taking place December 8th at 7 to 10 p.m. So it'll be very different from what you see tomorrow with Maru and Anne's work. And we hope to see you there. Yes, a lot of thank yous. Jen and Marianne say thank you to you, Anne.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.